Welcome everybody to this webinar where we will talk about how to implement a medical cloud solution. My name is Frida Gothager and I'm head of marketing here at Data Ductus. And I'm happy to see that so many of you had the possibility to join us today in this live event. With me today, I have three of our subject matter experts that I will introduce to you shortly. But first, I'd like to go through some practical details. So hopefully most of you can hear me, but for those who can't, here's some information on how to fix that. We will have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. We have already received a couple of questions that we will address, but feel free to send us more questions during the webinar. There's a Q&A field in your window, and just type in your question in Swedish or English, and we'll answer them at the end. This webinar is being recorded, and we will send you a link to the webinar and also the slides afterwards, so you don't have to take notes like crazy. If you would like to have some more information, you can visit our website at dataductus.com/medical, and you can always book a free consultation with us. Just send us an email at info@dataductus.se. Now over to our speakers. So here we have our group of three experts. I will start with Amin Gulia, who is our principal advisor with a lot of experience from the pharma and medical industry. We have Johannes Svensson, our principal solutions architect with more than 10 years of experience from IT security, APIs and cloud. And we also have Martin Simonsson, our vision machine learning specialist, who started off his career by earning a PhD in oncology. And that's also me with my contact information if you need to get in touch with me regarding this webinar or some other information about our offerings. And with that, I'd like to give the word to Amin.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Some of you were joining us in our Data Integrity Part 11 seminar last week. Welcome, everybody. Okay, let's dive into this. First, a little bit about me, shortly. I have been in a medical device field for many years and had the opportunity to put some advanced software and equipment on the market, including 510K submissions. So we try to give you some knowledge and know-how about how to implement the medical cloud. So what is this webinar about? We wanted to give you some practical knowledge about how to develop, deploy, and maintain a medical software cloud platform. We will give you some practical insights about the challenges involved with that. That is very important. Procedures to procure and develop such a system internally. We will also give you some information about the cost and timeline. That is very good to have, especially if you're a project leader. We will also talk about a lot of regulatory aspects regarding this. So a little bit about the topics. I will give you a little bit short intro about Data Ductus, about us. I try to keep it short and spend the most minutes of your time to give you a lot of know-hows and information, so you will get a lot of value. And next topic we will discuss is why we want to do cloud and digitalization, and dive into challenges. And after that, we will go through the pre-study procedure and go-to-market plan. We will discuss the difference between off-the-shelf service with modification and custom-built solutions for to connecting your devices on the cloud. We will talk some cost and timelines. This is very interesting for your for project leader and for program managers to understand how much effort and time and cost it will typically take to create a cloud solution. And we will go in deep and discuss about deploying and maintaining a medical cloud solution, what happens after the projects roll out, when you come to the validation phase and maintenance phase. It's very, very important to discuss. We will also talk, my colleagues will talk about identity and access control, and also talk about how to transform data into value. And then we will talk and take questions and answer them for you. And we have a couple of questions that we already received beforehand to me. So let's continue. Before I go forward, I just wanted to touch base on about a regulatory point and talk about what is a software as a medical device. FDA's definition is that the software that is intended to be used for one or many purposes that perform these purposes without being part of a medical device. In other words, a software that performs several functions without the need to have a specific hardware. And during this lecture, when we are talking about software or cloud, we are implicitly talking about this definition, software as a medical device. But of course, it all depends on your intended use for the device. Many of you will deploy software solutions as a hybrid that you from the start doesn't need to have it classed as a medical device, software as a medical device, but it's important to build everything and deploy everything in a correct manner. Some examples here about what is a SAMD and what is not a SAMD. So I will not dig more into this regulatory part. Let's continue. I want to talk about Data Ductus a little bit. We are founded 1989 in Stockholm, Sweden. It's privately held, and we are 250 plus employees. We are in Skellefteå, Uppsala, Stockholm, Malmö, Luleå, Kiruna, and in United States we are in Denver, Dallas, Boston, and Singapore and Tokyo. We are offering a full service IT solution to everybody, so we are very good at IT. We have operational services, IT services, we have advisory services, we have implementation and development services, deployment services. So for our customers, we can take the full aspect of the whole solution basically and give you a full package. Our business units are 3 business units. One of them are network and the other one is IT and IoT systems. Within the IT and IoT system is our medical part, and we have also IT and service management. And we have some partners that I have here, but we are very open, and usually we are working together with our partners, and a lot of our value revenues comes together with close collaboration with partners, and we have a very extended experience with that. A little bit about our core team, medical device core team. Within Data Ductus, we have a core team that the whole core team are formally educated in all the regulatory requirements that exist, and they have a lot of experience to working inside of this regulatory environment for the industry, for medical device and pharma, developing advanced IT systems. Our average development experience is 10 plus years, and our engineers have usually been with us for many years within the company. We don't have so many turnover, basically. We have many PhD level experts within the company. We are very strong on IT. We are very strong on cloud solution. and customize IT development. And this is basically our strength. We have some QA and project management as well, and we are used to develop systems using the V model shape, design control and risk management that is very common within the industry. But we love and we usually want to work with agile methodology. And even before COVID came into the scene, since our engineers are in many different cities in Sweden and in United States, we have already been used to work in a digital way, so we are very good at it, and we are always getting better. Yes, this is a little bit about us. So there are a lot of hybrid people within our company that knows the regulatory parts and have a lot of experience within that, and at the same time are very good developers and engineers basically that have been with us a long time. We wanted to get efficiency through continuous improvement. So all the projects we do with, within other fields in the industry, within finance, within manufacturing, etc., we are improving our knowledge. And when it comes down to it, it's all a matter to have good people with you, good engineers with good skills. We are improving our processes a lot, and we have also some tools that are getting better and better and better, and have a lot of automation and a lot of know-how. So we get better with each project and try to utilize knowledge from all of the industries and get it together for medical fields. So a little bit more about Data Ductus. We have faster time to market, as I explained before, because of our past experience. We are very good at creating regulatory compliant products because we know the regulatory we have a regulatory understanding of a lot of hybrid developers within our company. We have a very cost-efficient development and business model that we try to utilize. And our vision, basically, our medical group, is that we try to use the latest technology, digitalization technology, and enable you to have real-time user data for product development and improve patient case to make it enable this technology for the medical field. And finally, but not least, within our company, we are very good at security and privacy. And we have developed many systems that needs to fulfill a lot of certification and so on regarding this. So a little bit about Data Ductus. We have digital experts, and we have knowledgeable people for validation, implementation, and IT, but we are very good at, if you see on the right side, we are very good at managing IT system and cloud, and we have a lot of years of hands-on knowledge about this, and we try to give you some insights within this project. So I'm not going to waste your time talking about us, so let's get down to it. You can read more about our services here and contact me. So let's get started. So why should we care at all about cloud and digitalization? Well, the digital world is changing healthcare. There are a lot of new tools, new technology that exists that drives everybody to have a data-driven value-added services. And all the company and all the pharma and medtech companies, they need to create new forms of customer loyalty by switching to an interlinked vertical business model and using that by utilizing data analytics, data management, data processing, etc. So this is very important. If you want to be future-proof, you need to have this. And many companies want to boost their efficiency using innovation and reduce of the cost of manufacturing and support of each individual products. To be able to do that, you want to have things like remote service, preventive measures, etc. And many times the external channels that exist, including distributors, agents, partners, OEM, they are representing a significant percentage of a company's sales, but they generally have very poor processes to collect and communicate data that have a lot of big impact on patient safety and poor traceability, basically. And data-driven value-added services is not existing for many times. So people are using many times Excel sheets, Dropboxes to share data, and email for sharing data and utilizing all of this data back to the company. And using digital tools and data to differentiate your product is a very competitive in a competitive landscape is needed for your external channels, and you need to pitch to your distributors, agents, and partners additional solutions that you have, that you show that you have a digital system. And lastly, but not leastly, the regulators everywhere are understanding that these new technologies exist and they are matured. Many companies has started to connect their devices to the cloud since 2008, 2009, but right now the technology is becoming very mature and simplified. And the regulators are putting in new regulatory demands. For instance, IVDR 2022 and MDR, they require companies to adapt and utilize this digitalization technology. And they emphasize that you need to go from reactive to proactive measures instead. And to be able to do that, you need to be able to process data and make it visible and get value for it from it, basically. There are some dimensions to this. You have a dimension that we call measure and control. And here you wanted to connect all your devices or machines and measure and control to do optimization, cost reduction, post-market surveillance. And there is another dimension that we call aggregate and integrate, where you wanted to have a hybrid centralized historian, for instance. You wanted to analyze data and you want to have an agile service deliverable for everybody. And the third dimension is you wanted to create customer loyalty by creating additional value for the customers. One of them could be that they can automatically back up their data in a secure backup system, or other values that is created for end customers. And end customers can be both your distributors or others, basically, and finally patients as well. And through this dimension, depending on your need, you will have a different needs, basically. And I will not take more time on this, but it is expected that a huge amount of data will be created, and most of the tools and the equipment will be connected to the cloud, and the data will be gathered, and we will utilize a lot of knowledge and good value from that. One other aspect that I touched based on before is that there are new regulations coming in, and technological advancement had made it possible to have connectivity, connect data, and this technology advancement have created that you are able to do proactive data gathering and analysis rather than relying on reactive data gathering. I will talk about that. And that has changed the post-market surveillance requirements significantly. And this shift has also been emphasized by regulatory authorities that set focus on reactive measures. For instance, in this example, you can see on the left side, reactive measures is complaints, recalls, audits, MDR, non-conformance, and proactive can be data collected from your service that your distributors do, remote diagnostic, PM clinical, customer KPI data, device usage data, and all of this data needs to be collected and filtered and used so you can create additional value and have a very good post-market surveillance, basically. That is one example. I wanted to touch base on some user cases as well, since everybody that has joined us, it's around 44 people from 20, 30 companies, and they have everybody have their own need, but I will take some practical user examples here so we can have it in our heads when we go forward. One of them is basically cell therapy or gene therapy downstreams, and many times it is customized production process with small labs that needs to be working, and you have many equipment that generate data for different vendors and equipments, and all of this data needs to be gathered and analyzed and collected, and it's very important that you do it in a uniform way, that this gonna be done in a proper way, basically. So that is one thing. Electronic batch record is needed many times with trace every manufacturing step with automation to increase productivity and have a good manufacturing processing compliance and improve security of patients. And this is rather difficult, and it's a problem that needs to be solved. Something else is that once you have all of this analytics data in your pipeline, if you have bioinformatic pipelines, you need to share this data and analyze it in a uniform way. This is one user case, for instance. Another user case, of course, this means that you have to handle a huge amount of data. And if you were at our data integrity lecture that we had before, we talked a lot about this. Another user case is basically remote diagnostic in data usage of equipment in the field. You have a lot of machines in the field, and you want to collect data continuously from them and drive value. So you have a global usage, and you want to collect data as a PKI, a global dashboard. You want to measure turnaround time, rerun ratio, etc., from all of your instruments. And you want to create added value for your end customers by give them possibility, for instance, to have backup, restored, remote firmware update, and IQ/OQ routines, automatic IQ/OQ routines, and help them to improve their turnaround time, etc. Furthermore, you want to be able to be proactive and do remote diagnostic and reducing the cost, the service cost for your distribution and vendors, basically. This is another user case that we call user case 2 that we will touch based on later on. Now I'm going to talk about the challenges that we have. We have some cognitive bias. All humans have some cognitive bias, and we discount or ignore what we don't know. So we will therefore talk about the 6 challenges here that is very important to know beforehand. And this is information and knowledge that is very important that we want to give. So what is the core challenge though, then? Well, the core competency of our medical device companies and pharma is not digital. They are focused on developing drugs, therapies, and devices that save lives. The IT competencies that exist in these companies that are focused more on core infrastructure like email systems or some embedded systems, etc. The software development, validation, operation knowledge is focused on embedded devices, as I said before, and not cloud solution. And furthermore, they are all streamlined to be on-premises systems that we will talk about. And most often, they have not adopted agile software development. After all, in the role of regulated medical support, it's all about experience and competency to perform quick, cost-efficient iteration and stay compliant. And furthermore, you need to have a lot of DevOps and maintenance procedures, and you need to have advanced change management system and automatic integration and tests to be able to be compliant. And this is very different if you have an on-premise system compared to a digital cloud solution. And it is important to partner with a medical software cloud expert to enable you and the biopharma and medtech pharma to focus on their core competency and accelerate their time to market and bring the value into their company, basically. So launching an IoT health solution or a medical cloud or is very, very complex. It's not a simple thing. So I will bring up 6 challenges here now that we will touch based on. One thing that is important is that when you're using a cloud solution, there are a lot of infrastructure in the behind the scenes, and there are a lot of modules that exist. And you will benefit from this because all of the improvements that they do behind the scenes or bug fixes and so on, they will of course push it out to all of their customers many times, and that's why we will get efficiency in the world and better tools. But this also means that you have a fast progression cloud infrastructure that you have many changes per day sometimes, and this creates compliance risk. And to be able to deploy and maintain a cloud solution and manage all the changes that happens all the time with the change control to make sure that you have a validated system, it's very difficult. And we will go and talk about this more into detail. Another aspect is the regulatory aspect. The global regulatory requirements are ever changing. They are changing a lot, and you want to make sure that you have a future-proof system. And one part of it is to have a very proper design control and a lot of know-how to create a good documentation and risk management for your cloud solution and doing things from correctly from the get-go. We will touch base on this as well. So you will have a very good FDA master file or making 510K submission or other submission for other authorized bodies. So you have your regulatory part in place. This is a very complex, and you need a different set of knowledge and expert information that is difficult to find. One additional challenge is that the privacy challenge. You have over 1,000 complex global privacy laws and data integration if you have a global presence, and that most companies have to manage this. And you have some legal uncertainty. And it is very important to have both technological solution and architecture that you can use that is future-proof, that you can manage all of this stuff, and you can be easily certified with HIPAA, GDPR, or Part 11. And we had a different lecture about this that we touched base on many difficulties regarding that. If you want to have a link to that as well, please let us know and email me, and we will send you some information and the recording about that as well. That lecture. So privacy is very important part of it, and for this you need also have a set of different knowledge and skills and routines. One additional very important issue is the security. So when you're using cloud solution, you have significant cybersecurity issues for connectivity and data, and you are more exposed. And furthermore, you have an increased responsibility against your end customers. And therefore, many security certification is needed, and a lot of consideration is needed to during the development and procurement of such systems that needs to be fulfilled. And this is also very, very important aspect that should not be neglected at all. And for me personally, what is the most important parts is also that you need to have autonomously. That means you should utilize platforms and existing models, but you have to, this is very important, you have to own your own source code and data and your source code documentation, and basically own your IP. This is very important. You should not be dependent and dependent on a single source of provider or company. There are a lot of platforms out there, and but what is important is that you should choose an off-the-shelf platform or using a different kind of platform. But the important thing is that you should maintain your control and have IP ownership. And this is tricky. And finally, but not leastly, you want to be data-driven. And there is a challenge to build and customize data utilization interfaces analytics. So you need to be able to utilize data. When you collect a lot of data, you need to analyze it and bring it, distill it, and get some information about this. So you will have the added value. And doing this in a regulatory environment is quite difficult if the final result of the data is used for patient care and etc. You need to have knowledge and know-how on how to consider that. And furthermore, about data-driven challenge is that you need to also be able to quickly adapt, modify, and develop and try having projects that have can be finished quickly, basically. So typical certification needed for global use are these, and you can look, some of them are here, and many of the cloud providers will provide you a lot of documentation and knowledge, but what the bottom line is that there is no turnkey solution that are certified. Most of the time you need to do the validation yourself, and you need to cross-check and make sure that all the technical regulatory aspects are fulfilled. So there are no shortcuts, and I hate to see when I see software still on the market when they claim that they are Part 11 compliance, because you cannot be Part 11 compliant just by putting in some technical measures. You have to also have SOPs and processes and a lot of other documentation to becoming compliant. Well, there are a lot of things that needs to be considered. And when you have a cloud solution, there are many layers, as you can see on the right side, that needs to be there. And security is very important for all of these layers. And our recommendation is that you base your solution on a standardized reference architecture, then you should not rebuild the wheel all the time. So you need to have a full stack system, and you need to have a lot of security implemented in a system by design. And you need to remove dependencies between all the modules, and this is also important. So you can have an architecture and not be dependent on a certain provider. And your architecture need to be pluggable, it need to be event driven, model driven, And you should also think about utilizing data analysis in the future. And this also includes that you need to have technical aspects and think about how to anonymize data, for instance, if you wanted to do calculations and so on. So all of this needs to be part of it. And you need to integrate everything together in a proper way. And to be future-proof, you need to use standards. And standardization is weak within IoT and cloud, but very important. It's important to not reinvent the wheel all the time and create silos, having many multiple custom solutions. And there are a lot of standards that you need to consider and be aware of that exist and are developing. And my colleagues will talk about some of these standards. So I will not spend a lot of time on this slide. I have a bonus challenge for you here. Many times in the field when we talk with customers, they have a lot of silos with custom software and custom equipment that generate data in different systems, in different databases. And this system exists sometimes in many places in the world. And all of this data needs to be integrated to each other. So, and all the devices and processes come with a built-in software and management interfaces. And you need to connect many device silos to existing legacy systems. And this is something that we are very used to in Data Ductus. I have been doing this for many years. And you need to basically be good at integrating systems with each other. And that is what is important also. So now I'm going to talk about what is a proper pre-study procedure to be able to procure or develop a medical cloud solution for your company. And I will also talk about a standardized go-to-market strategy that is also equally important than this. And usually these two procedures should go in parallel with each other. So let's talk about this part. Before starting with a cloud IT system, you need to make sure that the system aligns with process transformation within your organization and organization alignment. This is extremely important to have that. And many times, immature and non-flexible off-the-shelf system will not fulfill the individual need of the medtech and IVDR companies, and also pharma companies as well. We have a procedure for this, and procedures, I'm going to go through it quickly. Step one is basically identify and collect information about the stakeholder for the digital cloud platforms. You have sales, you have quality assurance, regulatory assurance, distributors and customers, operations, support, IT. And this is very important that you involve all these departments and make sure and try to see what is the lower hanging fruits. And you should be able to always try to start small and be able to find the things that brings most value for yourself. And step two, you should match these needs and the procedure transformation and organizational alignment with technical requirement. And step three, it's the most important part. You should go back to stakeholders and double check and verify the technical requirements that fulfill the expectations. And this means that you need to have a suite of technical requirements that you know that you can validate, you can implement, and you should be able to create mock-ups or quick demos for your internal people, and really nail down the intended use and classification of the system. This is very important. And step 4, yes, this is also what I'm talking about. Step 5 is once this is done, you need to create a formalized validation plan that is not a plan in a paper. And this validation plan will be completely different to on-premise systems, because you have to have additional consideration using cloud services in your SLA agreement and QLA agreement, and we will touch base on this later in the meeting. And number 6 is also that you should do make an internal process change plan to have all the different departments involved in this and describe it in a document. And again, it is important to have all these aspects together. So all these aspects needs to be very clear, and so you can choose a correct cloud solution that fits you, that fits all these requirements, because there are many layers to this, and architecture and security is very important. And what finally people see in the end is the top 2 sections. They see the application that generates reports and business processes. But behind the scenes, there are many layers that needs to be aligned with this. And what important thing is that you should be able to do quick demo and mockups. That is the key to have a very proper, good system, to really understand what is the lowest hanging fruit. And basically, our recommendation is to start small, but have a platform and architecture that you can expand and add additional functionality to, basically. One example that I bring up here is that you need to have a lot of requirements and know-hows where you know how to implement and fulfill them using models, and how to validate each of these requirements and match it with the expectation, basically. And this pre-work needs to be done in a very, very proper way. It's very important to do it. A second process that is equally important is the go-to-market plan once you have this solution in place. The most important part of the go-to-market plan for a digital solution is to incentivize all the sales operation partner by creating digital added value. So if you create a lot of technology solutions to connect your devices to the cloud, if your end customers or patients don't put the effort in to connect you to the device, and you will not bring the value that you expect for your business model. So end customers are very important to understand what incentives they have to put the effort in and connect your device to the cloud. And you need to also understand the distributor's pain and need, and what kind of added value and future services that are sellable and differentiate you between you and your competitors. That is very, very important to have in place. And you need to also couple in support and operation for that exists in a global space. Sometimes support and operation is done by other parties, and you need to get these external channels all coming together. And in this world of software, it's all about quick, cost-efficient iteration, and it is important that you are able to do quick mockups and quick trial and error to really get this feedback and verify all of your hypotheses of added value from go-to-market strategy. And one important thing is that connectivity to the cloud is simple to install, secure, and compliant. And to the right side, I have one example for INC NEMA that is used in many hospitals to connect devices and systems to the cloud that you need to fulfill, for instance. And all of these requirements that exist there needs to be considered, basically. And the most important thing is that when you have collected all of the needs of all the parties, you need to take this into account when you're building it, so you are avoiding rebuilding it and choosing the right solution to go forward with, and defining your intended use for your systems. And so you don't need to bring out everything down and build it again in a couple of years. And one important thing is also that you have to calculate your return of investment and clearly defining your and verifying your assumptions about the value that your system will bring. So you have a very good business model where you can go up to the management and have a very clear understanding about risk and have these tornado charts and everything, so you will have a very good project investment for this and go to market plan. So all this is very, very important. Usually this goes in parallel with the previous process. And now I'm going to talk about off-the-shelf service versus custom-built solution. And I will go through this very quickly, and you have to make sure that you have the full source code and engineer documentation, because you want it to be in control and you want to be able to do customization maybe sometimes yourself, or bring in some other knowledgeable teams of R&D people that make it, and be agile. So it's very important to have you should not have a vendor lock-in. And you should also have a migration plan to be able to migrate your data from one vendor to another vendor. This is often not included in the system. And this is very difficult. There are a lot of cloud provider solutions, but you have to make sure that your architecture in such a way that it is easier to migrate from one cloud vendor to another. This is also important from business point of view, so you are not having only one option when you're negotiating your contract and your cost structures for the future. So the answer for off-the-shelf services with modification versus custom-built solutions, it's a matter of your user case and functionality need and intended use, basically. So and result of the pre-study. And we will say that it's better to start small and expand, and don't make too big projects from the get-go, and try to avoid islands of data and try to use standardized tool as much as possible. This is very important. So let us go and discuss about cost and timeline a little bit. By the way, if you have questions, and please put them in the question box, and we will try to answer this in the end of the seminar. And now we come to something that is very interesting. If we want to digitalize our system, how much would it cost then? And what is a typical timeline to be able to do this? This is very important information that we wanted to give to you, so you can get a understanding, a rough understanding about the dimension of the cost and the timeline. And remember, I had two user cases before that I went through, and I will talk about them a little bit in my head when I show you some examples of cost and timeline. So typical cost and timeline based on other vendors, that is off-the-shelf vendors, or if you build a customized solution. Nowadays, nobody develop anything from scratch, but they are using models and standards. Of course, it is not good to do everything from scratch, but it varies a lot depending on the complexity and functionality needed. Here I assume that you have off-the-shelf service solution with some modification, with validation and regulatory requirement basically is fulfilled. And other vendors claim, if you search, that total build investment and deployment is around $5 million for one product. So it's a huge investment usually that needs to be done. And time from development to launch is around 2 years. So that is what typically is added. It depends really on how you do it, of course, but I just want to give you some dimensions of the costs for this. And annual maintenance to keep the system up is around $500,000 to $1 million per brand or product. And of course, less modification is less cost when you do that. But if you perform this and doing it in a proper way, with each project you get better for of course. And what we are experiencing and what Data Ductus usually models, we have business models when we share the risk with each other and so on. What we typically see sometimes, for instance, for user case and user case 2, we have roughly development and customized cost for $1.1 million and some additional costs if you need more AI or special views or big data management costs. And sometimes there are some external costs because we need to use some tools to upload massive amount of data and so on. That is that we don't own ourselves. There are licensing costs and so on. So this is a very rough cost estimates. It really depends on what kind of solution you want. And timeline calendar. Yeah, let me talk about the bug fix yearly. The first year, commonly after deployment and validation, it will cost around 20% of the development costs. And after this, it will be very reduced because of our know-how and our architecture knowledge. It will be around $70,000 per year around. I just want to give you the dimensions of the cost basically for additional R&D. And from timeline point of view, if you have done a proper pre-study and go to market plan previously to this timeline, you will do some more additional requirement specification for a month, and you will do a proof of concept testing for 9 months, and then additional 9 months for finalization, fine-tune, industrialization, and finally you can go into formal validation and testing and it basically takes 3 months to do that. And this is also a very rough timeline to be considerate, but this is a very good information to give out for you, because me myself, I have been a project manager for many years, deploying big systems, and it's good to have a very rough dimension of the time and the cost, so you don't have improper expectation basically. And a little bit more about the operational costs. I will give you an example about this. Here we are, this is from an actual example that exists in reality. But our assumption is that we are having 3 terabytes of data per patient or per user case, up to 1 gigabyte to 3. An average metadata processing for direct access per patient is 10 gigabyte. That needs to be existing in the cloud that you access immediately. And deeper analysis can be ordered by the platform that takes 10 to 12 hours on 16 cores. And tools needed for upload and download data sets, and formal testing and validation for this. When everything is tested and implemented, it takes approximately 3 months to do. And operational costs, will be around a fixed cost for $100,000 per year, and per patient cost will be dependent on what type of layer the data resides in. Of course, if you have your data in cold storage, it is cheaper. If you have it in warm storage, that access time to the data is a little bit less. It is more costly. And then finally, if you have data straight ahead that you want to use less than 10 millisecond access, it will cost. So a rough estimate is per patient cost will be $55 per month on patient or user case if you have this structure. But here we are accessing and saving a huge amount of data per patient, for instance. And this is not uncommon that you need to do and be able to analyze and access and share. And now I'm going to turn over the control to my colleague, Johannes, to talk about identity and access control and FHIR protocol. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you. I'm here to talk about, as Amin said, identity and access control. Let me see. So the go-to standard for authorization is OAUTH 2, and it contains a set of different flows, a standard flows that supports different use cases. And I will actually go into a little bit deeper into one of the flows later on. On top of that, we have OpenID Connect, which is about how to identify who is trying to access data. And that could be a user or a device or other service that is trying to access data. And we put all this together in JSON Web Tokens. That is a way to actually compact all this information and send it around. And we sign it and encrypt it so it can actually be passed around without being compromised. And as I said, the OAuth is different flows. We have device flows and we have code flows and client credential flows. And I will actually dive into the implicit flow, which is one of the little bit more complicated flows. So the setup is that we have a resource owner that wants to access data through a client application. And then we have an authorization server and an authentication server. So it all starts with the client ask the authorization server and sends his ID and also what he would like to access. So in this case, he wants to access all the patient data and only read access them. And the authorization server turns around to the authentication server because you need to know who is actually trying to request this data. So the user is challenged to identify himself, and that could be done by bank ID, a username, password, or maybe a fingerprint or something like that. So, but it's all as long as you follow the OpenID Connect standard, it's easy to plug in different ways of actually identifying yourself. And at the same time as you identify yourself, you also consent that you actually give access to the MyHealth app to read your patient data. And that's the delegation of access. So the authentication server turns around back to the authorization server and sends information that Johannes logged in. He logged in with bank ID, so we know it's a strong identification, and its social security number is 123. And that's when the authorization server can actually create this token, sign it, and then pass it back to the client application. So there are a few more things actually going through in the background here, but I'm making it a little bit easier for this presentation. So once the client application has this token, it can access the APIs and passing the token along. And the backend can actually verify that this token is indeed still valid, and it's also a trust set up between these two entities. And it's also easy to add on different authorization services, so you can have trust against many different services. So what we have done here is we have, in a standardized way, we have identified the user, we have requested and delegated access, and we have shared this identity and access information. But we're still missing something, and that's the standardized data, because the data is still, or the OAUTH doesn't tell anything about the standardization of the data we pass around. And that's where HS7 Fire comes in. And back in 2018, a few tech giants, they all committed to actually stop trying to enforce their own standards and actually start using an existing standard, and that is HS7 Fire, which is the latest version from HS7. And I think the most commonly used one is HS7 version 2. And then we have the XML version as well as version 3, but it's not as widely adopted. So only 2 years later, actually Microsoft and Google, I think, has come the furthest with this. They have released services that it's very easy for you to, with basically one click, create and deploy a Fire service that where you can actually expose and ingest data into a Fire compliant format. And on top of that, you can then add your own set of UI, a standard set of UIs actually. So one, you can use the same UI to access the Microsoft service or the Google service. It's all because they all confine to the same standards. And the standards that are used is the OAuth and the OpenID Connect for identity and authentication. And then they use the HS7 Fire standard to access data. And I know Microsoft and Google, they are both HIPAA compliant and also ISO 27001 compliant as well. And Google Cloud, for example, they can actually ingest and send HS7 version 2 messages as well. So it's easy to set up this new way of actually sharing data or enabling other people to read data, but still integrated towards your old legacy systems. But we have still one missing puzzle piece as well, and that's from the patient point of view. We want to, when we are in a confined space like one hospital or one clinic, it's easy to set up the rules, who can access what. Basically, it's the caregivers that can read data from a centralized database. But when we move out in the broader perspective, where we actually want to start sharing data, or the patient wants to share his or her medical records or the family's medical records to clinicians outside the local healthcare solution, then we still don't have any good way to actually manage this user managed access, how to give consent to another caregiver to actually read data about me. And that's where the health relationship trust comes in, the heart. And that's an OpenID Connect work group that is working with the HS7 Fire standards together with the OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect. And then they add user managed access on top of that. So it's a way of actually defining this. I will give access to this caregiver to read my patient data, for example. And one use case could be that if, for example, I need to monitor my pulse and my oxygen levels, so I need a device that can actually read and report these values. And I also need a caregiver that should be able to read and observe my vitals. And in this case, the user could, or the patient could actually then say that, okay, I'm gonna delegate access to this device to write observations for me. And I will give access to this caregiver to be able to read my demographics and also to read my observations. And I think all this aims to be able to truly share data in between different systems. We stop doing this with silo systems, so we can actually exchange data in between systems, and the patient can have access to their data at all times. So I'm going to leave over now to Martin, who's going to talk about transforming data into value.
Thank you, Johannes. I will now share with you some thoughts about transforming data into value. Let me get the right. So, today data is abundant. It's all around us and we generate more every minute through our mobile phones or our activity online. Some say that data is the new oil that will fuel our economy. I'm afraid that this might be a bit misleading. Raw oil is valuable as it is. However, data needs to be refined in several steps to be useful to drive anything. The first way to refine and add value is to have good quality control on the data that you collect. Make sure that you can trust your data, know where the data comes from. So you make sure that you just don't collect noise. If you can't trust all the entries in your data, make sure to add that to your data, a measurement of quality so you can validate it at a later stage. This is the next step to add value to your data, and that is to annotate your data. Add expert knowledge to it. This is what you will need to be able to build insight in the next step. To build insight, you really need to understand your data. You need good tools to visualize the data, and this step is very much a group effort with spanning multiple areas of expertise, and you really need good communication between application experts from different fields, as well as data analytics experts that can build models and analyze data, and these models and results can then be validated by your experts in the field. How to build value from this insight is very dependent on your application. However, I will share a general outline that has been applicable to most of the cases I have been involved with. And one way to add value is to make good predictions. This is just an outline over how I should make or not make a decision to eat an apple. So I have the reality, in this case an apple. I gather some data about it, shape, smell, colors, and so on. And from that, I build an internal model of this apple and compare it to my previous models of good apples and bad apples. And from this one, I will make a prediction to either eat the apple or not eat the apple. And then, based on this prediction, I will make some sort of action. These steps are the same for most of the applications, be it these apples or finding errors in glue boards or seeing if a cell is a cancer cell or not, or perhaps make prediction of a suitable treatment for a patient. So to make this, you need some tools. And all the cloud providers have their own set of tools for storing and annotating and visualizing data. They also have their own infrastructure for training and deploying models. One challenge with this field of AI and machine learning is that it's still very much developing. Right now, Google and AWS might be the front runners when it comes to technology, but this might shift in a couple of years. And also, when you're building a machine learning model, you want to incorporate more data because that's the way that the model will learn more and you will get better and better performance. However, to implement this in a medical cloud, you still need to be compliant with cloud change control and meet all the regulatory demands. So this is something that we have experience with and know what changes you can do and still not having to update everything. So the take-home message when it comes to data is that you shouldn't just collect and store data, you should take really good care of your data and keep adding value to it. With well-curated data stored in a good format, you will be able to migrate to other providers or to take advantage of the new development within technology, be it hardware or new software. Thank you. I will now pass the torch to Amin.
Well, thanks a lot. You heard my colleague Johannes talk about standards to be able to manage identity and share data. That is very, very important to use standardized tools and models that exist, that multiple customers are using, to using the security features that exist, and build a very proper architecture to be able to do that. And furthermore, to have all the regulatory aspects of the Part 11 and requirements also fulfilled. It is very important. And furthermore, Martin discussed the importance to have a plan how to utilize the data that you collect with, and how to be able to analyze it and show it to the decision makers finally to make this final result. It is very important to have this knowledge and choose the correct vendor for the need that you have to utilize the data. And I go back to what I said before. It is important to start small, but have a proper architecture and procedure so you are able to be future-proof. It's very, very important. We are off by a couple of minutes, but I'm going to talk about deploying a GXP cloud solution. So as you will see, deploying a cloud solution is a lot of difference compared to on-premises solutions or custom solutions. You need a new validation approach. You need a new change management, and you have to have a new operation and maintenance routine, basically. And you need to have a lot of tools actually and routines to be in place. And these tools and routines needs to be already from the beginning of the project as a requirement. And furthermore, something that is very, we see it a lot, customers are neglecting the SLA, and they are using standardized SLA agreements, and the negotiation needs to be done in a proper way, because renegotiating this is going to be very difficult. And the same goes actually with the supplier quality agreement. And you have a lot of special cases from the start, and it's hard to renegotiate this, negotiate this once it is in place. In practice, Data Ductus have done a lot of cloud operational for many years, so we have quite a few knowledgeable people within our company that knows about this stuff. So as you have been seeing before, the benefit of going to be digitalized and going to the cloud is that you can have access to many different models that can perform excellent result without building everything from the scratch. And now I am taking an example of Google Cloud, but Data Ductus are used to all of the cloud providers. We are basically independent, and we wanted to use the correct cloud vendor for your need, basically. And there is a big difference between what the cloud provider says on the paper, what their modules and buildings and systems can do, and what they actually can do from hands-on perspective point of view. And it is very important to have that knowledge and know-how as well. So you have all of these building blocks, as you can see here, to do a lot of stuff for security, for medical, and everything. And but this is a very good thing for everybody, because these tools enables us to do things quickly and fastly that we couldn't do before. But there are actually some difficulties with this as well, as we can go to. As you can see, if you have a software as a service systems, when you do on-premise systems, you have all the different layers that you can see within your grasp, and you manage everything. You manage the network, the storage, the servers, virtualization, and all of it. if you have an infrastructure as a service, some of these parts are managed by someone else, and you do the other ones. And finally, you have the what is called the SaaS. That is the most common way right now to deploy and most cost efficient to do that, because you can have improvement in all of the layers of the systems and therefore have a more cost efficient system. But others is managing this. And this creates a little bit different approach for customers to manage, as we can see. So everything you do is in on-premise, who is doing it in the SaaS system? So you have updates and patches that is coming in. You have configuration management, change management, server maintenance. You have audit trail review. You have change review. You have user access review, data backup and restores, and you have disaster recovery. And many times there are the vendors of the clouds comes with a quite big quarterly software revisions and push updates into the system. And they push you some documents, and you have 30 days to manage that and review the documentation and try to be able to keep up and have a validated system in place, basically. So you need to have a process to be able to review release notes and really understand these complicated release notes, what it means and what it has for impact for your validated system, basically. You need to make impact and risk analysis, and try and map it to your user requirements to see what parts maybe you need to revalidate and what part you need to test. And it is also added new features into these models many times, and you need to do code-based changes, and you have to have regression testing. So a lot of automatic testing, automatic validation code is needed. So in your architecture, you need to already from the get-go have a quite good architecture, so you can do a very quick automatic testing and try to minimize the manual testing and validation, basically. So this is very important to have. And validation is also very different compared to on-premise versus SaaS. So installation, version management, update installation, change management, all of this stuff needs to be streamlined and clearly defined in your SLA and QLA. One example can be for some patches for your cloud solution, sometimes you need to switch off some of your audit log for 10 minutes or 20 minutes and then turn them on again. And then you have to have all of these cases clearly identified. And there are many cases that also doesn't require feedback to you. So in on-premise system, your system is a fortress. You can have control over who can do what and when, and your validation state is preserved. But in SaaS, you need to have a very good supplier level agreement and technical tools as well. Because sometimes when you're deploying a system in your SaaS, you have a lot of different configuration, a very complicated configuration management system with XMLs and a lot of things that you need to take care of. And you need to have special tools that can compare the configuration you have right now compared to the last validated state, basically. And to be able to generate reports regarding that. And you need to have a very gradual detail with quality agreement. And you need to clearly define in this quality agreement changes that require end user authorization, vendor authorization changes that only require notification to you, and action that not require notification. And this is needs to be very detailed and very clearly expressed, because it's difficult to renegotiate this once you have gone online and have done your validation, basically. So the tools for the change management is needed. Sometimes many different tools, and all of these tools that needs to be specified and developed. And also this tool needs to have requirements that needs to be fulfilled both by your cloud vendor and also by your own development of the shell platform. And most of the time you have complex SAS configs, many XML files, as I said, and special settings that needs to be all of this needs to be collected automatically, because it will be very time consuming to check everything all the time. And you need to be able to compare and display differences between the system that is validated and configured to see that all the modules are the same version numbers when you validate it or not. In a very complex systems with many layers and many different software models that are used. And also you need to have a lot of tools to do automatic integration tests. You need to be able to distill audit trails and have a lot of standardized security checks and generate report for reviews that are required if you want to be certified as a secure systems. And most of the time you need to have on 50 plus 60 70 requirements only regarding to the SLA. And many times these parts are basically neglected from the get-go when you are developing the system. And this is equally important to have in place to have a very efficient cloud and a compliant cloud and reduce all the regulatory risk regarding this. So that was the part that was very important regarding the having and maintaining a regulatory system. And now I have a little bit slide about why Data Ductus is a suitable partner, but I actually will skip that because I wanted to get to your questions, so we will create added value for you. So I just skip this. It is just repeat of what I said in the beginning. And let's go to the quality QA section of it. I have two questions that I wanted to talk about that I got previously that I wanted to share with everybody. They are quite good questions. And after that, we will talk about questions that exist in the that we got from all the participants. So let's see. And one question that we got is that why should we progress from a self-hosted model to a cloud? And why shouldn't we have a self-hosted model ourselves within the company, basically? And this is a very good question that I try to answer to. So one problem is scalability and storage. And unlike conventional self-hosted models, cloud computing have the flexibility to increase or decrease their data storage and computation. And you have more flexibility regarding your cost as well. And furthermore, you have the internalization part. You have ping time, speed, legal aspects. Sometimes some countries require that your data is saved, physically saved in the European Union or in United States or in Japan, if you have an international system, etc. So all of this can be managed quite easily by using a cloud solution with a proper vendor, but it is very difficult to manage that yourself. Another thing is cost, of course, and avoiding investing in keeping the lights on activities over innovation in your company. So making your own self-hosted cloud is difficult. And remember all the modules that I talk about that exist, that all the vendors provide similar modules, and They have also pipelines for different type of systems. And if standardization is very important, because if you're building everything yourself, you cannot utilize standardized modules, basically. And above all is security. If you're building everything yourself and doing self-hosted systems, you cannot use a lot of standardized security features that exist for the cloud. And many cloud providers can provide you a lot of know-how and make it much easier for you to have a certification in place for HIPAA, etc. So the technology has really matured in the couple of 10 years that it has been existing, and currently is available for use, basically. And one other thing that is important, that is much easier to have a data-driven models, improved collaboration, and transforming data into value, as Martin talked about. You have standard artificial intelligence and machine learning pipelines. You have standard genomic data processing. And when I say standard in brackets, is mean in reality, when you're using these models, there is a lot of custom modification and hands-on that you have to do, and before you get good results. But it is much better than start doing it from scratch, basically. Question 2, what are the top challenges for implementation validation and your proposed solution? So we have touched based on many of these things, and I hope that it was valuable for you. But I will repeat something that personally I will talk about. And my co-panelist, if you want to join in and say something, please do with your audio. So we covered the top 6 challenges, but what is very important is that collecting the requirements from all of your stakeholders in the company, and make sure that you choose the right future-proof platform for what you need to be able to do. And it is very important. It is very challenging and difficult. And our proposal solution to that is that to have a very good process to do a pre-study and go to market strategy, and also have a very good collaborator that are knowledgeable about the IT system that exists, basically. And one other point that is important is that many companies neglect the deployment and maintenance part of the project, the last part that I discussed about, and this should not be neglected. It's very important that to have negotiate a very good SLA and SQA, and also put technical requirements from the get-go that also validated. And it also make it much easier when you're going to be audited by regulatory bodies in the future if you have this improperly set up. And finally, what is important is that if you have a very knowledgeable IT people that knows the cloud and knows the technology and can do the coding in .NET or whatnot, it is important that everybody have some experience and understand the regulatory part of it, so they can have a proper design control, risk management, and keeping your documentation tight. And it's very important to use proper tools to be able to follow through the whole project. And we ourselves usually recommend that you are using a standardized tools to do that and validate it. And most of the time we follow companies' own procedures and quality management system, but it is very important that you have good people with right skills, so mistakes are not done from the documentation and regulatory point of view. Both are putting requirements in place, right requirement, right standard operation procedure, processes, and also to not miss be in the end of project miss some documents that needs to be created and try to recreate that in the end. It's that mistakes should be avoided basically. So other questions, Frida, do you have some other questions for us?
Yes, I do. I also realized that we're running late. I'm so sorry for that. We will send a link to the recorded webinar. If you want to drop off, you will get the questions and answers later on if you want to. But I will start with the first one. We have received 2 questions. So the first one is, from your reference list, I didn't see any pharma companies. Who are your pharma customers?
Well, our pharma companies, some of them don't want us to put their name in a public manner. And when we are doing these webinars, we have 40, 50, 60 plus participants, and we don't want to mention their name and respect them. But if you go to the dataductus.com medical, you will see some user cases that we are working with currently in our past user cases. And if you wanted to know this, you can contact me into one-to-one meeting, and we can discuss this together.
I can also include the links in the email that I send out together with the other materials.
Yes.
Right. Question number 2. What do you see the most at pharma customers, on-premise or SaaS?
Well, traditionally, we have some pharma companies. I don't know if I should mention it, the name, but we have one that I know that are in Uppsala, quite a large company, for instance, in Sweden, and they were very early with the cloud adaptation and digitalization, for instance, and they used on-premises IoT systems and invested many years on that. So what is common, has been traditional common, is that they have been using on-premises systems, but on-premises systems have their own difficulties, of course. And the reason many times in the past that they use on-premises system was that the vendors of the cloud solution, they were not really ready for the pharma regulatory people, and they were not set up for that in the past. But now they are getting there. They are not fully compliant either, even if they say so on paper, but they are getting there. And there are also some other vendors that has popped up that offers platforms that they have done 5-10 submissions on, that you can do customization on top of that to do what you wanted to do. But behind the scenes, they are using the models that the cloud providers are handling them. So their platform have some value, but yes. So, but what you should do is really depends on your intended use, if you have international reach, and what you want to do in the future, basically. On-premises systems, we have done that as well, and we do it for some of our customers. And we actually do one on-premises operation systems ourselves as well, that we manage for other people's servers and so on. We do that. Am I wrong or right? Johannes maybe can jump in this with some audio.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I think, I mean, hybrid is becoming more and more common as well, and not only in pharmaceutical and healthcare. I think in many different areas, for utility companies and so on, because the pre-existing functionality in cloud environment are so easy and good to use nowadays, and it's easy to develop new systems, but many times you still need to keep some data locally on premise. So you build integrations. You have this layer on top in the cloud, and then you integrate towards other services in the cloud and also on-premise services as well. So you have a really good ecosystems up in the cloud that you want to utilize on your on-premise data, basically.
Yes. If I go back to this picture, You can see on the right side, we have the cloud and you have connected devices. The icon that looks like a house is basically on premises. So hybrid systems is something that is very common that we think that we will see more in the future as well because of old legacy systems basically. So yes. Okay, do we have any other questions? I'm very sorry that we didn't do the time in a proper way.
Questions.
No more questions. And then I thank you for joining us and many thanks. And if you have additional questions or want to have a one-to-one meeting with us, you have my contact information.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.